Hello, everyone. It's me. It's your boy, or not. Today, I'm going to review The Black Echo by Michael Connelly. Now, the reason I'm reviewing this, or well, before I get into the book itself, um, there's a TV series called Bosch. It was on Amazon Prime and has a spin off on Freevee TV or whatever it's called. I don't know. And that series is based off this series of books. And I'm a huge fan of that TV series. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And I don't typically read this genre. I'm normally a sci fi fantasy sort of reader. However, I made an exception because I like the show so much that I decided to give this book a go, despite the fact that it is not in the genre that I typically read. My voice is still a little rough. I'm still sick. I do apologize for that. Well, I don't apologize for that. I'm sick. You should be like empathetic towards me. Mm. But, but yeah. Anyway, let's sort of jump into it now that you know that. So the Black Echo is the first book in the Bosch series. There's over 20 of these books now. Michael Connelly is a incredibly prolific writer. If you're not familiar with Bosch, you may be familiar with The Lincoln Lawyer. It got a movie and a TV series. That's Michael Connelly as well. Um, and this book was published back in 1992, which means it's much better than the stuff that you get these days. That's not exactly true, but it doesn't have all the crap in it. And it's not worried about tiptoeing around and trigger warnings and upsetting people. It's just a book that wants to tell a good story. And an interesting thing researching this one is Michael Connelly used to work as a crime journalist. This was back when journalism was journalism, and he would actually have to drive to crime scenes and interview police, etc. And that sort of was his foundation for writing this book. So he has a lot of knowledge on the topic. And it really does bleed through and show when you're reading this the way that things work and the actions characters take and the way they talk, etc. It feels like someone in the know. Like, it doesn't feel like me trying to teach you about American police. It feels authentic, which is really, really cool. So the book is about Hieronymus Bosch, not the painter, a police detective who's rough around the edges, does things his own way, is effective, but rubs everyone else the wrong way in doing so. He's sort of a lone wolf, so to speak. And not in the typical way either. Like, he's nowhere near perfect. In fact, he makes so many mistakes, but he makes those mistakes because he's so passionate about what he's doing. And I don't mean to downplay it. He's probably the best detective on the force. But his traits are the fact that he is so good at what he does that he sacrifices his personal things to solve these crimes. And so the book is the first one in the series. It's very interesting. It's written, like, obviously it was written in 1992, and prose was different back then. So one of the very interesting things I found reading this, especially when you read, like, for me being a mostly sci-fi fantasy reader, is how little sort of how simple some of the writing is. There's a lot of paragraphs in this book that are, he did this and this and this and this. Um, and in a lot of modern books, you wouldn't have that. You would have, it would be, they would find a way to weave those sentences better. In a lot of books, you would sort of not try to use and too much, especially in a single sentence or paragraph. But and we'll see what happens as I read the rest of these books. But in this one, at least, it's very simple. And you would think that would be a negative. You think that would be a negative, but it's not. Um, so um, it's hard to explain. Like, books don't have to be technically perfect to be good. There's plenty of books out there that have mistakes in them, but have, sort of two out of three elements good. And that's sort of one of the joys about reading this one is because all like the conversations are so well laid out, and the insider knowledge of police investigations is so fun and interesting that it's kind of relaxing not to have too much purple going on with everything else. He gives you just enough information to paint the picture, and then Michael Connelly is very good at weaving incredible conversations and characters through conversation that makes everything believable. And the conversations generally create the scene, and it's very, very interesting. It's not something I'm used to reading, but I found it to be a joy. A really, really sort of relaxing read in that regard. And it's one of the few books where I've been able to do extended reads, like reading for 3 to 4 hours at a time. Typically 1.5 hours, and I put it down. I'm a bit tired, but not with this one, which is really interesting. Now, the story itself is great. By the way, if you notice cuts on this, it's because I'm cutting out all the coughing and wheezing. You guys don't really need to hear that. The story in this one, it's great. It's interesting. I've obviously seen the TV series, so I can tell which seasons and stuff they borrowed elements from, and I kind of knew what was going on. But it was different enough from the show that it still kept me surprised by certain elements. And in some ways, because it's a book, you get a lot more information that you wouldn't get out of a TV series. So it was a really fun dive back into this universe, seeing as I've caught up on the show. I'm trying not to be biased because I really like the show, but that's because it's just genuinely good. And this book's really good as well. I'm definitely going to read the rest of them. I've already got like 4 or 5 of these on my bookshelf already, and one of them already on my bedside table as my next big read. To get back on topic, Hieronymus Bosch, detective, rubs everyone the wrong way, very passionate about his job, sort of eats, sleeps, breathes detective work and solving crimes for good reasons, which you sort of slowly discover in the series. He's a Vietnam vet, he gets presented with this crime that looks like just a typical drug overdose, but he sort of sees 1 or 2 small things that most cops would overlook and decides better and pisses everyone off as it's a public holiday weekend. And he decides, nope, this is a homicide. We're all working the weekends. And there's some interesting elements here because he's recently got in trouble with internal affairs for a sort of questionable shooting. So you've got these elements of like he's trying to solve this crime that is basically no other cop would have even known was a crime. There's a personal element to it too because he served with the victim in Vietnam, and he's got internal affairs up his ass, sort of double checking everything he does and twisting it and getting in his way, etc. And then he's also got to work with the FBI on the case as it's linked to a bigger thing. Go into detail with what happens in that because I'd be spoiling the mystery, and that's why you read these books. But it's a very interesting story. It's a fun mystery. There are lots of twists that you won't see coming, and you really feel for every single character in the book. And the action and mystery set pieces are great. Like, even though I knew the answers from watching the show, I still didn't know the full answers. I was still so wrapped up in it. So I definitely suggest to people who, and look, if you're a fan of the genre, you've already read these books. But if you haven't, give it a go or just check out the TV series. The Black Echo by Michael Connelly is a massive thumbs up. Big fan. Can't wait to see what happens with the rest.